Hello and welcome to The Menu, Monocle Radio's food and drink programme. I'm your host, Chiara Rimella. Coming up, we speak to the man whose passion for cooking with fire has been fueling Singapore's and one of the world's best barbecue restaurants.
You know, you've got this precision cooking with a blend of like French, Japanese, with Australian products being championed.
Also on the programme, we trace the journey that took Hong Kong noodles to London.
These cultural products, or even Hoco as a whole, is giving Hong Kong immigrants here a taste of home.
Plus, we speak to the Croatian author translating literature into enticing recipes. All that here on The Menu on Monocle Radio. It's a well-known fact that Australians are pretty attached to the idea of a good barbecue, but for Aussie chef Dave Pynt, the inspiration that led to his enormously successful restaurant in Singapore, Burnt Ends, comes from all around the globe. In a city as food-rich as Singapore, it's hard to make a statement, but Burnt Ends always feels novel and satisfying, and that's because it's no ordinary barbecue restaurant. Many of the ideas that shape his cooking today were ignited from time spent in the kitchens in some of the world's most respected restaurants, from Noma to St John and Etxebarri in the Basque Country. But for Pynt, it all comes back to the fundamentals of cooking meat impeccably. Now, he's written a book to celebrate his restaurant's evolution and his own very personal take on proceedings. Burnt Ends, What is Modern Barbecue, Whatever the Fuck I Want It to Be, is a pretty accurate representation of his no-boundary, no-holds-barred approach to the task. I spoke to Pynt about what makes barbecue perennially fascinating and to try and answer the question at the heart of the book.
Look, I think the way we've looked at it is we don't want any borders, we don't want any boundaries. We just want to cook food that we want to eat and the way it makes sense to do with all the different techniques that we've got with barbecue. So remove all the borders, but cook with technique, cook with beautiful flavor combinations, cook with amazing ingredients, but don't put yourself in a box with it because it's already a hard enough box to cook in.
I think it's interesting that you say, remove all the borders from it, because you're also someone who has travelled so much for your culinary career. And I wonder if, putting the borders back into the equation, what did you pick up in all of these different places that you have cooked in Australia, in Denmark, in the Basque Country, in London? What have you borrowed from all of these places to make it into your own borderless style of barbecue cooking?
Look, I think we've definitely taken bits and bobs from everywhere that we've worked, travelled to, eaten, explored, tasted and seen, number one. But in terms of what I've really taken from each of the restaurants that I spent time in was like, when you're with Tets, it's like, you've got this precision cooking with a blend of like French, Japanese, with Australian products being championed. And so you sort of, you listen to his philosophy a little bit about how he's able to bring that all together with that precision, that meticulousness, and, that repetitiveness to get yourself to a standard which is almost unrivaled or was around the time we were there. And then you go to someone like Rene and it's just like the guy puts himself in this tightest box of Scandinavian ingredients, but what he's able to realize is they've got some amazing ingredients that people never really looked at because they didn't have to and because they weren't put in this box. So because they put themselves in the box, they realized actually how many cool things and cool products there are in Scandinavia that are just being underutilized, which is really, really incredible. Plus the energy that comes out of that restaurant is probably the most insane levels that I've sort of ever experienced. And then you go to Etxebarri and it's like, here's the guy that goes, Victor's the guy that goes, barbecue can be really good restaurants and this is how you do it. So he was the first person that I worked with that sort of went, we can base a proper restaurant. And obviously, you see all the accolades that are under his belt now, but he's the first guy that was like, you can make a proper restaurant out of barbecue. And it was just like, holy shit, yeah, you can. And it's, it's all the things that you see in other restaurants, but I've never seen applied to barbecue, which is, technique, precision, produce, refinement, knowledge, professionalism, all these things tied up, but just with a cooking method focused around barbecue. So that was pretty incredible. And then obviously you go to London and work under Fergus and James Law at St John Bread and Wine. And it's just like, super seasonal, beautiful ingredients, great techniques, and just a huge focus on make it fucking tasty. And, you know, that's the biggest thing that I took from St. John is just make it fucking tasty. It doesn't matter, you know, what you're cooking with whether it's offal or some prime cuts or whatever. It's just make it tasty. And that was pretty incredible. So you wrap up all these things and hopefully, you know, we've taken some of the bits almost as good as what they've all done it and wrap it into a new package called Burnt Ends.
Well, what I really like is that there's obviously like a riotousness to the way that you approach things and to barbecue cooking in general anyway, because I think when you're cooking with fire, open fire, there's always a sort of an energy to it. But I remember eating at Burnt Ends when it was in Chinatown, and it was quite a small space, sort of cavernous and surprising considering the neighborhood that it was in. I'm really interested in the way that you've transported that into a neighborhood like Dempsey Hill, which is so leafy, so open and so kind of genteel. Do you think that the restaurant has had to kind of grow up and maybe smarten up a little bit as a result? Or how has that changed your approach as well in terms of this sort of slight unruliness of proceedings?
Look, I think by the time we sort of finished in Keong Sack, we were sort of getting a little bit more of that refinement. We were using slightly more expensive products. And so what we were producing or cooking with wasn't really matching the venue anymore. And so when we moved up into Dempsey, you know, we sort of got the curtains to match the drapes, and, you know, we did a slightly nicer fit out, but, you know, we put a lot of money into the sound system. So the look and the feel of the place was still had the same DNA of the old Burnt Ends, which was like fun and vibrant and, like you said, a little bit riotous and unexpected things in different corners. And we just really wanted to keep that feel. And, you know, we ended up closing off all the windows. The entrance is like we don't have much signage out the front. And so when you come in here, it's like you go from outside Dempsey and you step into the world of Burnt Ends. So it was really important to try and keep that DNA. But we did have a lot of people that they did prefer the old venue to the new one because it is different. It will naturally be a little bit different, but we've managed to find our feet in the new venue, and we've got people that come and they love and they enjoy it, and we still get to have a lot of fun.
Well, I think it's really interesting because, in a way, barbecuing is such a kind of a democratic and approachable type of cooking, and everybody has memories of it being very familial, very friends related. It feels very approachable. Lots of people kind of do it backyard type of thing. But actually, to do it at the level that you do it at, is the book approachable for the home cook? You know, can you approach some of the learnings of the kind of kit that you've got at the restaurant in your little barbie in, you know, the back garden?
You can definitely give things a go, and there's different sort of levels of sort of intricacy that people can work with. But I think the most telling thing for me was, you know, we worked with PA and Lotta on the book for almost a year and a half, and I've known them for like over 10 years. And, you know, what I noticed is throughout the process of writing the book and creating the book, they were cooking at home up in Sweden they had a little hibachi, which is like a little Japanese charcoal grill. And they would cook using the different techniques or some of the different spices or salads or rubs or whatever it is on their little hibachi at home. It wasn't recipe testing because, you know, like we say, some things won't work out because of the ingredients, the location, the scales that we do it on, etc. But they gave the techniques and some of the flavors a go at home and had really good results. And so for me, that's just sort of sums it up, right? If, you know, they're going away and doing that and they're the ones that are designing and building the book, yes, everyone can do it at home.
I was going to ask you also, how much of your Australian kind of childhood memory also plays into this? I feel like it's a stereotype, but there is a cultural aspect to barbecuing in Australia, no?
Yeah, there's definitely a cultural aspect to barbecue, and it's something that's like quite big with family and friends, and especially summer or winter having a fireplace. But in every house we lived in as growing up, my dad would rip out the gas barbecue and put in a wood-fired barbecue because he just loved the process of building a fire, having that time go by, waiting till the fire's perfect and then cooking. Whether he cooked well or not, that would definitely be debatable. But having that time and cooking a barbecue at the perfect point for family and for friends. And so it's always been good memories and obviously good food that we had growing up.
That idea of building a fire and still cooking with fire now, does it still excite you as it always has? And what do you think makes it so amazing, the idea of cooking with something so unpredictable and so alive like fire itself?
I think the nature of it being a beast of its own makes it not boring. It doesn't ever become a chore because it's always different. The type of wood might be different, how wet it is, how dry it is, how cold the temperature it is, whether it's windy outside. There's so many factors that go into just building your fire that you can actually never get bored if you like doing it. And then, the biggest thing that I've noticed cooking on wood is that when you cook something on wood, it's got this little bit of magic in it that you can just never put your finger on about why it tastes so good. And it's something that you can never get on gas, you can never get it on electricity, you don't get it on charcoal. But when you cook on wood and you have like that wood fire, it really does create that little bit of magic that no one can put their finger on it, and it just makes things taste delicious.
That was Dave Pynt. This is The Menu. Much has changed in Hong Kong in recent years, and as some of its inhabitants start new lives in new countries, there is always a desire to keep a connection to the taste of home. London is one of the many cities that has benefited from the influx of new Hong Kongese residents who have brought with them an enthusiasm for opening restaurants and venues with a strong identity. Here, contributor Twiggy Young visits 2 such establishments in the east of the city to learn more about expatriate food culture and how it elicits memories, as well as creating a new approach to the cuisine.
The call bell rings as the kitchen chef places the freshly cooked dishes on the counter, ready for the servers to bring to the tables. It is a common feature of Ca Can Tang, or tea restaurant in literal translation. The Hong Kong-style diner is seen as one of the most representative of the city's food culture. But I am not in Hong Kong. I am indeed on Brick Lane, Shoreditch, London. By removing the N's and G's of Hong Kong, Nicole Ma, the co-owner of the restaurant, has named the place Hoco.
So this is the dining area. You see that on every table we have the green tinted glass top, and then we put the menu underneath, and this is a very Ca Can Tang look. And then the choice of color, like the sharp orange, and then we have plates that are green, and also these booth seats, wooden booth seats, and I think all these are inspired by American diner in a way.
During Hong Kong's British colonial era, when Western dining was not something everyone could enjoy, Ca Can Tang originated as a clever adaptation to make luxury food affordable for the common people. Its dishes and beverages are known for a quirky blend of Cantonese and Western cuisines, such as the Hong Kong milk tea, which is also a signature here in Hoco.
I think we pick up the British people's way of drinking teas habit, and then because really fine tea leaves and also milk and sugar is such a luxury product back then, and the local, they're craving for good tea, and then but still having limited access to those luxury products, they try to think of their ways of still replicating the really good drink.
We use a mixture of different Sri Lankan black tea in different texture and size, for color, for aroma, for the flavor. Some people might find it a little strong because it's dipped for quite a long while, but then the Hong Kong milk tea has almost 1/3 of evaporated milk, which makes it very creamy, and milk tea is more about the perfect balance between the 2 elements rather than one dominating each other. So in general, it's richer, thicker, creamier than the normal British tea.
And as one of the first few Hong Kong restaurants opened during the immigration wave, what are some of the struggles you had when starting out?
If you want me to say, I think would be more about how we should define Hong Kong food in a sustainable way that local people will be passionate and interested to learn about, and also know the difference between Chinese cuisine or different province cuisine with Hong Kong cuisine, which is also, they have a little niche territory that is different from the others, and ultimately which is the mix of Eastern and Western element. And I think defining that has been the most difficult challenge and finding our own niche offering.
Are there any recent initiatives or products that you have done?
We have launched a new product which is a char siu bagel.
Char siu as in
Cantonese
barbecue pork.
Yeah, Cantonese barbecue pork bagel. And we use bagels from the oldest bakery on Brick Lane called Bagel Shop. So this bagel shop has been open in London for many, many years, and they are the very old establishment that have been on Brick Lane and defining East London culture. So working with them, getting the fresh bagel from them, I think is an extension of Hong Kong cuisine. And I think being on Brick Lane, we have the advantage of working with neighborhood shop and supplier and forming products that define Hong Kong culture in London today.
So alongside my milk tea, which Nicole has described earlier, I'm having their new product, the Cantonese barbecued pork bagel with stuffed cream cheese. This is not a typical option on a cha chaan teng menu, of course. The pork, though, is. So, Nicole, how would you say then these cultural products, or even Hoco as a whole, is giving Hong Kong immigrants here a taste of home?
Sometimes we see grandpa, grandmas, the two of them coming here and then sharing a French toast, and I think the scene is very touching. I don't know, from my perspective, I feel like they're remembering the old days together. There are some of the customer, they're British, but then they have spent time in Hong Kong. You know, during British colonial period, they may have a job there. It's so funny, sometimes they come here to remember the old days in Hong Kong. And then on the team's level, we have a really good team working in Hoco. I think a lot of them are starting a new chapter in the UK right now, and seeing the team really engage with each other, I think it really defines what we want to do in Hoco. We wanted to become a platform for Hong Kong culture, and it feels it's meaningful to establish Hoco.
Located just 30 minutes away is the newly opened branch store of Yun Gui Chuan, a Hong Kong-style rice noodle shop. It is in Bankside, Southwark, a London commercial hub. Shan is the co-owner of the restaurant.
Founded in 2013 in Hong Kong, Yun Gui Chuan Rice Noodle has grown into a beloved fast casual restaurant chain known for our customizable rice noodle and also authentic Hong Kong style dishes. With the successful expansions in Hong Kong, we have opened 2 branches in London. So one is in Brick Lane and one is now in Bankside.
What is Yun Gui Chuan? What does it stand for?
Our rice noodle is inspired by different Chinese regions, which rice noodle are incredibly popular. So Yun is Yunnan, Gui is Guizhou, and Chuan is Sichuan. But we also add some Hong Kong elements, which is Hong Kong cart noodle. So the cart noodle means you can choose from the soup-based toppings and also like the spiciness, all this kind of thing. A very high level of customizations. Matching these two together, this is what we say a Hong Kong style rice noodle.
How would you say rice noodles are a part of the Hong Kong food culture?
Yeah, I think the rice noodle definitely is not like very traditional or very classic. Maybe it's not the top of mind if you think about Hong Kong food. But I would say recent 20 years, rice noodle really have captured a lot of hearts from many Hong Kongers. So you can find different rice noodle shop, restaurants in Hong Kong easily. There's a lot. We can feel the passion from Hong Kongers on a bowl of rice noodle because they will even drive 3-4 hours from different city in UK to have a bowl of rice noodle, so you can feel it. There are quite a lot of people coming from different European city also. So we have customers from Netherlands, France, or like some European city. They just say, I live here in Europe for like more than 10 years, but I still can't find something similar to that.
Now I have a bowl of rice noodles in front of me. It's a sour and spicy soup base with bamboo fungus and cuttlefish ball. as the toppings. So what's actually special about this bowl of rice noodle that it's, especially unique to the Hong Kong food culture?
One thing I really want to highlight is our broth, because our broth is pot soup. We simmer this daily, more than 8 hours every day. Second, you got the best choice because sour and spicy is our top selling soup base. It is because the prickle mustard, so the sour taste of the rice noodle or of the soup is from the prickle mustard, and the prickle mustard is homemade by us. In terms of the toppings, I think there's quite a lot of like Hong Kong popular toppings that you can find from our menu. For example, the cuttlefish ball, all this kind of thing is really like you can easily find in Hong Kong, and we want to bring it here. So you got the best mix and match.
Twiggy Young with that report. This is the menu. Now it's time for the week's top food and drink headlines. Here is Monocle's Maisie Ringer.
Scotland's largest haggis maker is developing a recipe to bypass strict regulations that have banned the traditional dish in the US for over 50 years. McSween of Edinburgh has taken action in response to the 1971 law which prohibited the use of sheep's lung for human consumption. The new recipe will replace sheep lung with sheep heart and is set to launch in the US by January 2026. McSween has previously adapted its products to meet international regulations, including a vegetarian version for the US and a lamb heart substitute for Canada, its largest overseas market. The renowned French patisserie Bellargin House, known for its cannellis, has been fined €100,000 for consumer fraud by a court in Bordeaux. An investigation into the company revealed that it had deceptively presented its products as fresh when they were sometimes frozen. It also found the vanilla from Madagascar had been replaced with artificial flavouring. Inspectors also debunked the firm's claims to be using fresh milk and butter in its recipes. The case came after Bellargin's employees told local media outlets that they were being asked to lie to customers. And finally, French customs officials have seized record amounts of honey falsely marketed as a natural sexual enhancement. The aphrodisiac honey packets were laced with chemicals similar to those found in erectile dysfunction drugs like Viagra. Whilst only 18 cases of such illegal imports were reported in 2019, the figure swelled to 131 in 2023. French authorities say it had been imported from countries including Malaysia, Turkey and Thailand. Those are the week's food and drink headlines. Now back to Kiara.
Thanks, Maisie. You're listening to The Menu. Have you ever read a novel which describes food in such a way that you can almost taste the flavours off the page? Sandra Wejcicki most certainly has. She's an Emmy Award-winning Croatian journalist who loves to read and loves to cook as well. In her latest project, she's turned her hand to a combination of the two. Hamlet with a Wooden Spoon contains hundreds of recipes taken from literature, with some of the tales behind the authors and the dishes they loved. Monocle's man in the Balkans, Guy Deloni, met Sandra in Croatia's capital Zagreb to find out what's cooking.
Welcome to Zagreb's main square, Trg Ban Jelačić, where at this time of year you've got food stalls all around you offering all sorts of wonderful delights, not just from Croatia, but things which are inspired by different flavours from around the world. And as luck would have it, there's also a very fine bookshop here on Trg Ban Jelačić where you can buy the particular book which I've got in front of me right now, which has got everything to do with food and also to do with literature. It's called Hamlet s Kuhačom, and I'm going to get the author, Sandra Wejcicki, to explain to me exactly what that means.
Okay, so that is like Hamlet with wood spoon. And why Hamlet? Hamlet because everybody knows who Hamlet is. So I thought that's like a cool title for this kind of publication.
And then we got the subtitles underneath.
Recipes and stories from books, or what they are eating, cooking or roasting in the literature.
So should we open a page at random? Now this is actually good because this is connected with the region. James Joyce, who was no stranger to this region. Irski gulash od janjetina. Well, Irski is Irish, so but you can do the rest.
Irish stew, lamb stew. Irish lamb stew. James Joyce actually he lived in the city of Pula, and he experienced some Croatian food as well, and he was a big foodie. So I mean, the whole story about this book is that I am a big reader. I adore books. I'm reading all my life, and now I'm working with books. And then when you are reading, you also find you can find lots of food, right? If you remember from your childhood, Pippi Longstocking, she was baking some pancakes, or my generation remembers when Heidi was eating this bread with golden butter, and it was like mouth-watering. And then it just came as an idea that there is lots of food in the books and literature from early age. You have Rapunzel, and you have this princess who is spoiled, and he's on the one green bean. And then also in some Bubble and Squeak in the Willows, which is like typically British food. So I made a book with all kind of food, from soups to the main courses and cakes and cookies and side dishes. And it's all connected with literature and the people who wrote these like big, important and beautiful books, and what they eat or what they like.
It's a very expansive and extensive book, Sandra.
Yeah.
How many recipes have you... I mean, there's one recipe per page.
Yeah.
How many recipes have you got in here altogether?
A little bit more than 300. Yeah. It's a coffee table book. I thought that this is some homage to people who like to read and they like to cook, and maybe they can inspire them to cook or to read more.
So more than 300 recipes in here. Are these all recipes you have tried out yourself?
Most of it, yeah. I mean, when you're cooking, and we are cooking for decades and decades for our families, then you know what to do with some of the recipes they are mentioning.
Let's flick through again a little bit more. Let's take another page at random. Okay. Hey, look. Ketchup od glива, beg your pardon. Ketchup od glива, Jane Austen. Would you like to explain that one for us?
Yeah, I mean, ketchup is not American. Ketchup is Chinese, actually, and that's a crazy story. And there is lots of crazy stories in this book as well. So this is a mushroom ketchup, which they used to do in England before. The other one is the vinegar of 4 thieves, which is mentioned in Alessandro Manzoni book. And this is this famous vinegar which is supposed to protect you from the illness, like Black Plague and stuff. When I started to dig around and to do the research, I really discovered so crazy, amazing stories, and it really became, a project from the scratch. But I did it, yeah.
To what degree were you taking the recipe ideas directly from the pages of the books, and to what degree was it these were recipes which are relevant to the times or the nationality or the themes that the author is discussing in their works?
Yeah, mostly they are in books. For example, Yorkshire pudding this is the recipe of George Orwell. It really is his recipe. Then you have risotto with lemon, asparagus and mint, which was cooked by Friedrich Nietzsche.
That's interesting, though. You get into what is the philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche's cooking.
Or Karen Blixen, this is the cake they are making, this like Danish pastry they are making in Denmark even today. And I think that actually some of those cakes you can still eat in her home, which is museum today, and blah blah blah. Then you have lemon sponge cake, which is in Little Prince.
I mean, I like the fact that you're not being snobbish about the literary figures you choose. I mean, you've got Jane Austen and James Joyce on the one hand, absolute classics of the English language, and then here on this page you've got Lemony Snicket.
He's a classic for the kids. I mean, this is like really nice cereal. I mean, there is always, talking on what kind of books you should read. Should you read, I don't know, romantic novels, or crime? I mean, just read, people, because as much as you read, your taste will expand.
How do you see people using it? Is this going to be a case of people seeing a recipe they like and then seeing it linked to an author and going away and reading a book, or are you thinking that people might come at it the other way around, choose the recipes of their favourite authors?
Oh, both ways are fine with me. Maybe somebody will... As you can see, it's a big book. So maybe somebody will say, oh, look, I think I really want to try little cookies with the tea, with the jasmine tea. Oh, Emily Dickinson. Who is Emily Dickinson? And then maybe they discover this amazing American poetess. Or they'll see, oh, what does it mean, ice cream, G.B. Shaw? Who is G.B. Shaw? Or the other way around. Shaw really like ice cream, chestnuts and cherries. What the hell, I think it's okay. Both ways will do fine.
And when can we expect the English translation, Sandra?
Oh, I don't know. I'll try to do it.
It's still in the oven?
Yeah, it's still baking.
Well, we look forward to that one being fully cooked, Sandra. And in the meantime, we'll create some cuisine from the recipes in your book, Hamlet with the Wooden Spoon, for Monocle, in Zagreb. I'm Guy Delaunay.
Thanks, Guy. And that's all for this edition of The Menu. Remember that we are back with a new episode again on Friday at 2000 London time. That's at midday in San Francisco. Also, don't forget to tune into our spin-off show Food Neighborhoods for a tour of some of the world's tastiest destinations. I am Chiara Rimella. This program was produced by Monica Lillis and our sound engineer was Flynn Simons. Thanks for listening, and until next week.